Alright, so you should each have in front of you activity sheet 1, vocabulary and symbols. And you should notice the front page is a bunch of fill in blanks. So we're going to go through this, not too quickly, but quick enough because you're just pretty much copying things down. What's a conditional statement? What do you think that first word in that first blank should be? A statement that can be worded would be fine too. I was thinking written. So it is a statement that can be written in if-then form. What's the hypothesis? Part of a conditional statement. It is part of a conditional statement that follows the word if. That follows if. A conclusion is part of a conditional statement that follows the word then. Negation. New word. We haven't talked about this. The negation of something is the denial of a statement. So denial of a statement formed by adding or removing the word blank from a statement. Any guesses as to what that might be? Nope. Adding or removing the word when you deny something.
No.
Yes.
Close. Close. It's not. No, it's not. You either add the word not or you take away the word not. So, for example, yesterday I said to you guys, if it is Saturday, then I will wear my red shoes. So the denial of that would be if it is not Saturday, and then the denial or the negation of the conclusion would be that I will not wear my red shoes. If it is not Saturday, then I will not wear my red shoes. You with me there?
Yes.
Yes. Miss Beckler was wearing red shoes yesterday, and I looked down, and I ever fit that
Oh. I did think about wearing red shoes today. All right, to add or remove the word, negate. To negate something means that you either add or you remove the word not from a statement to change its truth value from true to false, or you change it from false to true. The converse, we've already talked about the converse, that's not a new word. Converse means, or the converse is a statement formed from a conditional statement by, what do you think that says? Substituting would work. Someone in my last hour said swapping. Switching was what I was looking for, but that's not the only word that will work there. By switching the what and what? The hypotenuse. The hypothesis.
Did I say hypotenuse?
Yes, you did. The hypothesis and conclusion. By switching the hypothesis and the conclusion. The inverse, new word. Inverse. What is statement? Formed from a conditional statement. It is a statement formed from a conditional statement by, what do you think that word is, starting with an N? Statement by negating the what and the what?
Hypothesis and conclusion.
The hypothesis? It's almost like we were talking about hypotenuses recently. The hypothesis and conclusion. The inverse means you don't switch the order. You don't switch around the if and the then, you just negate the hypothesis and you negate the conclusion. That's called the inverse. All right, a contrapositive. A contrapositive, take a wild guess how it starts. A statement.
Conditional statement.
A statement formed from a conditional statement. Conditional statement by switching and negating the hypothesis and the conclusion. So, when later in the hour, I'm going to ask you to write the inverse of something. I'm going to ask you to write the contrapositive of something. I'm going to have you write the converse of it. You're probably going to want to look back at this because especially the inverse and the contrapositive, since they are new to you, are going to be, you might get them mixed up a little bit. So contrapositive, not only do you switch around the if and the then part for the hypothesis where the conclusion was, the conclusion where the hypothesis was, but you also have to write the opposite of it. You have to insert the word not or get rid of the word not. So it is a statement formed from a conditional statement by switching and negating the hypothesis and conclusion. What is the next word? A biconditional. Doesn't that sound familiar? Biconditional, we talked about that yesterday. Is everyone caught up? Can I delete this and scroll down a little bit?
No.
A biconditional says this. It's a statement combining a conditional statement and its converse using the phrase if and only if. Very good. If and only if. Alright, so a biconditional statement combining a conditional statement and its converse using the word if and only if. Alright, there's some boxes here that have to be filled in. When you use P and Q and R and S and T, etc. for these conditional statements, what do they mean? What does the P mean? What does the P usually mean? The hypothesis. But the hypothesis is a what?
Statement.
It's a statement. So, and so is the, usually we call Q the conclusion. But Q is just or the conclusion is just a statement also. So when you use P, Q, R, S, etc., all that means is they are letters that are representing statements. What does that arrow mean? We talked about that yesterday. This arrow right here means implies. What does implies mean though? If P implies Q, what does that mean? Well, it means if P, then Q. If P, then Q. Implication. If you see P, arrow Q, that means if P is true, then Q is true. If P, then Q. Alright, new symbol. This little squiggly thing, it has more than one meaning in math, but in terms of logic and reasoning, that little squiggly means, anybody want to take a guess?
It's the nya
Not
of the
congruent.
end.
What'd you say?
So it's the nya of the end.
It means negation. It means to negate something. So, negation, or you know what, I'm just going to say, actually, I am going to write negation. It is the negation. Negation. Alright. Another new symbol. Do you guys remember back in the couple units ago we kept seeing this symbol? What did that mean? It meant or. It was the union symbol, or. So, can I delete? Can you guys over here? I kind of covered up some writing here. See this symbol right here? Looks very, very similar to that U that we talked about. So U, this is a V, but it means the same thing in this context. So this symbol right here means or. Union, this U meant or, so does the V. So let's go back to this. If this symbol means or, what do you think this symbol means?
Nor.
It means and. Very good. It means and.
Mm.
And one way to remember it might be that this thing maybe resembles the capital letter A. A for and? I don't know. Maybe that helps, maybe it doesn't. Yes,
Next one, I think it's therefore.
very good. This thing right here is a triangle formed from 3 dots. The meaning of it is therefore.
It kind of looks like the Predator's red dot.
What about this thing, the double arrow? An arrow with arrowheads at each side. It means it's true either way, which means it is a biconditional statement.
Ooh.
What do we use with biconditional? Yeah, if and only if. IFF. Alright. So I'm going to write if and only if. But of course, you guys remember that the abbreviation for that is just IFF. IFF. If and only if. Alright, all of that said, flip it over, please. You probably are going to have to be switching back and forth. But flip it over to activity 2, logic and conditional statements. And I am going to run through this first one with you, and then I'm going to have you guys try some of these things on your own. But this is an awkward statement. It is a very awkward statement, and it depends on what kind of a situation you are talking about for it to really make sense. So it says, use the following conditional statement to answer the problems. If I win, then you don't lose. So if that is truly a true statement, what context are we talking about that in? If I win, then you don't lose. How could that be? If I win and you don't lose, how could that possibly be?
Team.
It's a team sport. You're on a team. Like you're on a baseball team, or you're on a soccer team, or a football team, or something like that. So that's what we're going to do, is we are going to, for this situation, we are going to talk about this as though we are a team. If I win and we are on the same team, that means that you don't lose. And by the way, we're going to disregard ties too. Okay, so if I win, you don't lose. What is the hypothesis? I win. Not if I win, I win. The hypothesis is I win. What is the conclusion? You don't lose. Negate the hypothesis. So look back at your definitions. What does negate mean? What do you have to do to negate something? You either add the word not or you take it away. So is the word not in the hypothesis right now? It is not. It says I win. So how am I going to negate that?
Do not win.
Yeah, you don't use if. You just say I. You don't say I win. You say I don't win. Now, did you really add the word not? You had to add do not, which is don't. But that's okay. You've added the word not. So to negate the hypothesis, you say I don't win. Now it asks you to negate the conclusion. So the conclusion is that you don't lose. So how do I negate that? I got to take it out. I got to take away the word don't out. So what's it going to read if I take out the word don't? You lose. Write the converse. So the converse, if you recall, has nothing to do with negating things. It just means go back to your original statement and do what to it? Just switch it. Yeah, switch around the if and the then. So you are not going to say, if I win, then you don't lose. You are going to say, if what? Very good. If you don't lose, then I win. All right, inverse. Look back if you don't know what an inverse is. But an inverse says that you do what, Omar? negate both the hypothesis and the conclusion. So you negate the hypothesis. So when you negate I win, you say what? I don't win. So if I don't win, then what happens?
Then you lose.
Then you lose. Very good. Then you lose. You have to take the negation of it. And the original statement said you don't lose, you got to get rid of the word don't. The contrapositive, we've never written a contrapositive, but not only do you negate the original sentence, but you also have to switch the hypothesis and the conclusion around. So in that case, you are going to write if what?
If you lose, then I don't win.
Very good. So in other words, if you look up at number 6, all you have to do is switch the order of number 6, because the inverse is halfway to the contrapositive. So if you lose, then I don't win. All right, write the biconditional. The biconditional means you either go back to the original conditional statement, or you can go to the converse. I'm going to go back to the original. You get rid of if, you get rid of then, and what do you put in place of n? If and only if. If and only if. So I win, and you can abbreviate if and only if, IFF, you don't lose. All right, I would like you guys to finish this up, but before I set you free, I want you to switch to activity 3. If you could just, I'm going to give you guys time in just a moment, but if you could switch to activity 3 so I can talk about that before I have you guys start working.
Yes, ma'am. You have a compass.
I do. I'm recording myself right now, so. Write each of the following statements as a conditional statement, then circle the hypothesis and underline the conclusion. So Mark Twain wrote, if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. Your job is to rewrite that statement. Well, I hope you would agree that that statement is already in if-then form. It's just missing one word. What is it missing?
Then
It's missing the word then. So you know what? I'm going to let you be lazy for this one. Insert the word then right before you. So if you tell the truth, then you don't have to remember anything. So you don't have to rewrite that sentence. I'm going to allow you to do that. But now you need to go through and need to circle the hypothesis and underline the conclusion. But then letter B we need to talk about. So read letter B. Letter B says, Helen Keller wrote, one can never consent to creep when one feels the impulse to soar. Do you guys know who Helen Keller is? All right, the impulse to soar. What do you call, what is this part of the conditional statement? This is actually not the conclusion, because this says that the creeping part is not going to happen if you have the impulse to soar. So you'll be a creeper unless you want to be a soarer. Does that make sense? Soarer? I don't know if that's a word or not. So this part right here, this is actually the P. That's a little bit awkward. You guys are used to having the P come first and then the Q. So when you do a rewrite of this, it is going to have to say if one feels the impulse to soar, then what? If one feels the impulse to soar, then one can never consent to creep. So a little awkward there, but still you have to go through the directions. Say that you are supposed to circle the hypothesis, you are supposed to underline the conclusion. So go ahead, circle the hypothesis, underline the conclusion, in your if-then statement. I want to mention that that same situation comes up in letter C. The hypothesis is at the end of the sentence. Do you see the word if in there? If it does not include the freedom to make mistakes. By the way, this is the wording in this one is very awkward. It's because if you write this in if-then form, you would say if it does not include the freedom to make mistakes, then freedom is not worth having. So when you say if it, what is it? What are they talking about? They're talking about freedom. So I am okay with you guys using, it's kind of an awkwardly worded statement. I think it should read, if freedom does not include the freedom to make mistakes, then it is not worth having. And I know that sounds awkward, but I can't find a better way to come up with wording to write it in if-then form. So if freedom does not include the freedom to make mistakes, then it's not worth having. So do a rewrite, write in if-then form, circle the hypothesis, underline the conclusion. Yeah.
Use allow instead of make it freedom doesn't allow to make
Freedom does not. My issue is that I'm using freedom twice. So what were you gonna say? If what?
freedom doesn't allow to make mistakes, then it's not worth having.
Yeah, that would be good. You are adding a word, but I think the word you're adding means the same thing. So yes, that would be fine. Yeah. All right, Benjamin Franklin wrote, that one's not so bad. You get to bed early, you get up early, then you finish out the sentence, right? And then I'm going to stop, and I think that I have given you enough information now that you should be able to finish this